They say if you make a wish under the falling cherry blossoms, it might just come true. But what if that wish takes years and a broken heart to fulfill? They say if you make a wish under the falling cherry blossoms, it might just come true. But no one ever told me that such wishes come with a price. My name is Aiko, and this is the story of a letter, a tree, and a boy named Ren. I first met Ren when we were 6 years old. Kyoto was drenched in springtime, and the cherry blossoms swayed like pink clouds above our heads. He had a bandage on his nose and was sitting under a sakura tree, sketching birds with a pencil that was almost too small to hold. "What are you drawing?" I asked, my hands behind my back like a curious squirrel. "Birds. But they keep flying away before I finish them," he said without looking up. I remember sitting beside him, dusting off my skirt and saying, "Maybe you need a friend to help." That day, the sakura bloomed extra bright. Ren and I were inseparable after that. We had our secret spot, a large, ancient cherry tree behind the Kiyomizu shrine that no one seemed to care about. Its petals always fell early, and it felt like the tree bloomed only for us. One day, we decided to bury something beneath it, a time capsule. Inside, we placed 3 things: my favorite hair ribbon, his sketch of me under the tree, and a letter we wrote together. In that letter, we promised, if we ever get separated, let's meet back here under the tree when the sakura bloom again. Back then, it felt magical, like something from a fairy tale. But life had other plans. The spring of our 10th year was colder than usual. I remember standing in front of Ren, holding back tears as my father packed the last of our things into a rusty moving van. My mother had passed away that winter, and my father too. Broken by the memories, decided to move us to Tokyo. Ren stood there, holding a folded piece of paper in his hand. His sketchbook was clutched under his arm, but he didn't open it. For once, he wasn't drawing. "I'll come back," I promised. "Every spring, I'll write a letter and hide it under the tree. Promise you'll read it." He nodded, silent but firm. "And I'll leave you one too." I turned, and he grabbed my wrist. "One more thing," he whispered, slipping something into my hand. It was a tiny sakura petal, pressed and dried, sealed in a plastic charm case. "So you don't forget." I wanted to say something final, something meaningful, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I smiled and ran toward the van, that charm clutched tight in my hand. As we drove away, I saw Ren getting smaller in the rearview mirror, standing beneath the cherry tree. A single petal landed on his shoulder, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he would always be waiting. The first year in Tokyo felt like drowning. The city was loud and fast and endless. My new schoolmates didn't know what it meant to watch the sakura fall in silence, or how Kyoto's old streets whispered memories. I wrote the first letter to Ren on pink paper that smelled faintly of plum blossoms. I returned to Kyoto that spring with my aunt for a brief visit. I crept out early in the morning, found our tree, and dug carefully near the roots. I placed the letter in the little tin box we used as a capsule. There was nothing from him. I remember thinking, maybe he forgot. But I kept writing, year after year. By the time I was 16, I had written 6 letters, each one longer than the last. They were full of stories: how I struggled in Tokyo, how I started liking music, how I missed the way Kyoto smelled after rain. But mostly, they were full of questions I couldn't ask anyone else. Do you still draw birds? Did you ever read the letter? Do you still go to the tree? That year, I returned again. It had become a secret ritual: an early spring train ride, a brief stay with my aunt, and a quiet visit to the tree. This time, there was something new. Another letter, folded neatly, with my name written in small, careful handwriting I hadn't seen in 6 years. I held it like it was made of gold. My fingers trembled as I opened it, but it wasn't what I expected. Aiko, I didn't forget. But every time I came back here, I couldn't write. Because I didn't know how to tell you I was angry. I was hurt. You left, and the tree felt hollow. Without you. But now I understand. Thank you for writing. I read all of them. You haven't changed. I'm still here. Drawing. Waiting. Rennie cried under that tree until the light faded. When I got back to Tokyo, something in me had shifted. I started writing him directly, no longer hiding the letters. I addressed them to his family home, hoping they'd reach him. I never got a reply. Still, every spring, I returned, until one year. He wasn't there anymore. The year I turned 21 was the first time I didn't write a letter. Life had taken over. College, internships, and the constant buzz of Tokyo's ambition. The cherry blossoms came and went like blurred scenes outside a train window. But something kept tugging at me that spring. A silence. A memory. I hadn't forgotten the tree or Ren, but I'd let time blur the edges. Then, out of nowhere, fate called me home. It was a short-term project, a cultural documentary that needed a local coordinator in Kyoto. My professor recommended me because I still spoke in the old dialect and could read ancient scripts. I returned to Kyoto after nearly 6 years. Everything felt the same and yet different. The tea stalls, the stone-paved paths, the wind whispering through bamboo groves. But the biggest change came when I stepped into a quiet local gallery on my second day. There, displayed on white walls, were sketches, familiar ones. A girl with 2 braids under a cherry tree, a pair of children laughing with petals in their hands, and one so heartbreakingly clear it made me freeze. It was me, standing beside Ren, holding up a ribbon to the wind. He had drawn it from memory. Do you like the art? A deep voice startled me. I turned. It was him. Ren. But he wasn't the boy I had left behind. He was taller, leaner, dressed simply, but his eyes held the same quiet depth. There was a small scar above his brow now, and he looked at me like he wasn't sure if I was real. Aiko. His voice cracked when he said my name. And mine. Mine was lost. For a long second, we stood in silence, strangers made unfamiliar by time, yet bound by memory. I didn't think I'd see you again, he said finally. I wasn't sure either. He looked away, rubbing the back of his neck like he used to do when we were kids. I always hoped. But I stopped waiting. I nodded. I stopped writing. He smiled softly. But you didn't stop thinking about the tree. We sat outside the gallery for hours that evening, sipping bottled tea and watching the lanterns light up the street. We didn't talk about everything, just enough. Enough to keep the moment tender. But as I rose to leave, he asked something that made my heart stop. You still wearing the Sakura charm? I blinked. Then slowly reached into my purse. There it was, worn, faded, but intact. The same petal he gave me when we were 10, he chuckled. I can't believe you kept it. It reminded me of promises, I said, almost a whisper. That night, lying on the futon in my aunt's guest room, I couldn't sleep. Ren was still Ren, but I wasn't sure who I was anymore in his story. Was I still the girl from the tree? Or just a ghost from a letter he once read? The next few days passed like a gentle breeze, familiar, comforting, but with an unspoken weight. Ren and I met again. And again. once at a tea house where he introduced me to roasted matcha. Another time at a bookstore where he picked up a poetry collection and said, "This reminds me of your letters." Each meeting was soft, quiet, like pages of an old book being turned slowly, each word delicate, almost sacred, but we danced around the one thing that hung between us: the letters, the years, the goodbye. One evening, after we visited a bamboo forest for filming, I asked him to walk with me. We ended up near the old neighborhood. The streets had changed. The shrine was quieter now. The air smelled of moss and incense. And then we reached the tree. It had grown taller, the roots thicker, and more exposed. But the blossoms, it still bloomed just like before. Ren stopped in front of it, staring like it was a mirror. "You still come here?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Every spring. I left letters too. But after a while, I stopped writing them." "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because I didn't know if they mattered. If you were reading them. If I was just writing to ghosts." My heart clenched. "I read them," I said. "Not all, but some. I came back for a few years. Then, life just got in the way." He turned to me, eyes searching mine. "Did you forget me?" I swallowed hard. "No, I remembered you. Too much, maybe. That's why I stopped." He looked down. "You were the only person who ever saw me not just what I drew, but why I drew it. I hated that you left, but I also knew it wasn't your fault." There was a long pause between us, filled only by the sound of petals falling. "I'm engaged," I said softly. He blinked. "I didn't want to tell you like this, but I thought you should know." He looked away. "Is he kind to you?" "Yes. Very." "Does he make you laugh?" I hesitated. "Not the way you did." Silence. Then he smiled faintly, as if forcing it. "Then I'm happy for you. That you found someone who stayed." His voice cracked on the last word. We stood there, side by side, under the blooming sakura tree like two chapters from the same book that would never touch again. Before I left that night, I knelt by the tree and opened the small tin capsule. Buried beneath it, there was only one letter inside. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. "Dear Aiko," I waited. I hoped. But I never knew how to say the one thing I should said years ago: "I loved you." Maybe I always did. But sometimes love doesn't wait forever. Sometimes it just learns how to let go. Rennie didn't cry. Not until I walked away and the petals began to fall like silent confessions all around me. I left Kyoto 2 days later. Ren didn't come to say goodbye. And I didn't try to find him again. We both knew some goodbyes aren't said aloud. They settle into the silence, carried away by the wind and memory. Back in Tokyo, everything felt sharper, louder. My fiancé, Daiki, noticed my change. "You're quieter," he said one night while we shared dinner. "Did something happen on your trip?" I smiled and lied. "Just old memories." But inside, a storm brewed. Not because I didn't love Daiki, but because I knew the part of me that had once loved Ren had never truly stopped. Weeks passed. I tried to bury myself in work, wedding plans, and distractions. But my dreams betrayed me. I kept dreaming of the tree, of letters hidden in the earth, of a boy with charcoal-stained fingers who once drew birds that always flew away. Then, one rainy night, I found something on my doorstep. A small envelope. No name, no return address. But the paper smelled faintly of old ink and cherry blossoms. Inside was a sketch. Me, standing under the tree, looking back with one foot forward as if caught between staying and leaving. And on the back, in delicate handwriting, "Sometimes the Heart never learns how to forget. But if this is your path, I'll still wish you happiness. Re sank to the floor, that sketch pressed to my chest, tears slipping freely. How do you grieve a love that never truly began? The wedding came closer. Daiki was gentle, patient. He didn't press. But one night, after we finalized guest lists, he handed me a small box. I found this in your drawer, he said. Thought you'd want it with you. It was the Sakura charm, the one Ren gave me, the one I'd stopped carrying, hoping to forget. I looked at Daiki, unsure how to explain. He smiled softly. You don't have to say anything. We all have pasts. Just promise me something. What, if your heart ever feels unsure? Tell me. Don't let it stay a ghost inside you. I nodded, but I didn't tell him. Not yet. That spring, just 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a message from the Kyoto gallery, where Ren once displayed his art. Dear Aiko, we regret to inform you that Ren Kobayashi has decided to leave Kyoto and is moving abroad for an extended period. He left behind a sealed envelope with your name. Would you like us to send it? I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, No, I'll come get it myself. I arrived in Kyoto the next morning unannounced, unaccompanied, unsure. The city greeted me with its usual softness. The river flowed as if it had never changed course. The wind still carried that faint scent of ancient wood and blossoms. At the gallery, the receptionist smiled faintly when I said my name. She returned with a plain envelope, sealed neatly, aged just a little at the corners. No address, no date, just my name, Aiko, written in the same delicate handwriting that once signed every letter under our tree. I sat on a bench outside, hands trembling, and I read, Aiko, if you're reading this, then I'm already gone from this city, from the shadows of the tree, from your story. But before I leave, I want to give you the only thing I never had the courage to, the truth. I loved you from the moment you sat beside me and asked what I was drawing. And I loved you more every year after, even as your letters stopped, even when I saw your engagement announcement in the paper. Even when I told myself to move on, I didn't stop loving you. I just stopped hoping that love isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about letting go before it turns into a wound that never heals. You once asked if I still draw birds. I do. But lately, they all fly in one direction towards someone I'll never reach. Don't come looking for me. Not because I don't want to see you, but because if you do, I might not be able to walk away again. Marry him, Aiko. Live, laugh, and under the cherry blossoms, remember me not with sadness, but with a quiet smile. Because no matter what, a part of me will always be waiting under that tree. Renter paper blurred as my tears fell, blotting the ink. He was gone. Not just from Kyoto, but from the story we had always told ourselves would find its ending someday. I didn't know how long I sat there, clutching that letter to my chest. Time faded. Tourists passed. The sun drifted behind the shrine rooftops. Finally, I stood and walked, not toward the train station, but toward the tree. The sakura were in full bloom. The petals danced in the air, careless and lovely. The roots of the tree stretched out like arms, waiting to embrace all the stories left behind. I knelt and reached into the soil. There was nothing left in the tin box now. Only memories, only air, only the echo of a boy's voice asking, You still wearing the charm? I placed Ren's letter inside, sealed the box again, buried it, and whispered, Thank you for loving me even when I didn't know how to be loved. That night, I boarded the train back to Tokyo. In my hand was the sketch he sent me. In my heart, a choice I still didn't know how to make. Because when two souls have been writing letters to each other in silence for years, how do you suddenly stop? Back in Tokyo, the city felt different. No louder, no quieter, but more. Hello. I walked through the motions of wedding preparations, final dress fitting, rehearsal dinner, seating charts. But inside, something had broken loose. A piece of me I thought I had buried under cherry trees had clawed its way back to the surface. Daiki noticed. He always noticed. "You're not here," he said one morning as we sipped coffee in silence. "I'm right in front of you," I replied softly. "But you're not mine," he whispered. "Are you?" I looked down, unable to lie. Daiki wasn't cruel. He didn't raise his voice or ask questions meant to trap me. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something I didn't expect. The Sakura charm. "I fixed the string," he said. "It looked like it had been through a war." My throat tightened. He continued, "When we met, I always knew you were chasing something. Or someone. I thought, maybe I could catch up. Maybe I could be enough." Tears welled in my eyes. "You are," I said. "You always were. But not the way he was," Daiki finished gently. There it was. The truth. That night, I called my mother, told her the wedding was off. I cried harder than I had in years. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I finally understood what real love looked like. It wasn't about who could offer you the perfect life. It was about who could see the most broken parts of you and still choose to stay. And I had chosen comfort over truth. Spring faded into early summer. I didn't hear from Ren. Not a word. He had truly disappeared. No address. No updates. Not even a mention from mutual friends in Kyoto. But every day, I wore the Sakura charm. It reminded me of a boy who once gave it to me so I wouldn't forget, and it reminded me that I still had a choice to make. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived. No return address. No stamp. Just a simple pressed blossom taped to the front. Inside was a single line. "Are you still writing letters under the tree?" My breath hitched. There was no name. No location. But I knew. I packed my bags the next morning, not because I was certain he was in Kyoto, but because some stories don't end until the final letter is written, and I had one more left to send. Kyoto welcomed me like an old friend, quiet, gentle, unchanged. This time, I didn't go to the shrine, or the gallery, or the station where Ren used to wait for the bus. I went straight to the tree. The ancient sakura stood in full bloom, its petals carpeting the ground like soft whispers of the past. I knelt beneath it, just as I had 100 times before. This time, though, I brought no paper, no envelope, no letter, only my voice. "Ren," I whispered, "if you're out there, if you ever read this in the wind, I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I stayed away. And I'm sorry I didn't know what I felt until you were already gone." The wind stirred the blossoms gently. One petal floated into my lap. I smiled through the tears. "I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking for another chance. I just wanted you to know I never stopped loving you." "Not really." I stood, brushing off my skirt. "And then is that your final letter?" My heart stopped. I turned. Slowly, there he was. Ren, hair slightly longer, face thinner, eyes deeper. A satchel over his shoulder, a sketchpad tucked beneath his arm. He looked like he had walked miles just to arrive at this exact moment. "I thought you were gone," I said breathlessly. "I was," he replied. But I couldn't help wondering, what if you were still writing? I laughed through a sob. I was. Just not on paper anymore. He walked toward me. So, no fiancé. I shook my head. No wedding. Just me. He stopped a foot away. And this time, are you staying? I hesitated for only a second. Then, only if you still draw birds, he chuckled. They've started landing again. I think they were just waiting for the right tree. Tears fell freely now. I missed you, I said. I never stopped waiting, he answered. And just like that, we embraced under the cherry blossoms, not as children, not as memories, but as two people who had found their way back. We sat beneath the tree for hours, no words needed, he sketched. I watched, and when he handed me the paper, I gasped. It was us, sitting side by side, older now, with petals falling like confetti. At the bottom of the page, he wrote the final letter. But we both knew better, because some love stories don't end. They just bloom again every spring. Years passed, but the tree never changed. Every spring, Ren and I would return hand in hand, often in silence. We didn't always speak of the past. We didn't need to. It lived in the soil beneath our feet, in the tin box we left buried with our old letters, in the way he still sketched my face when he thought I wasn't looking. We didn't get married right away. Love, we had learned, didn't need a certificate to be sacred. It needed presence, patience, forgiveness, and every spring, without fail, we wrote one new letter each. Not for each other, but for the version of us that once sat under this tree, torn apart by time, stitched back together by fate. We'd write them, fold them neatly, and place them into the tin box beneath the roots. No envelopes, no stamps, just words, sealed in time. One spring a little girl wandered up the hill behind the shrine. She wore a red scarf and held a sketchbook, flipping through her clumsy drawings. Ren smiled and offered her a pencil. Aiko knelt beside her and asked gently, "Do you want to learn how to draw a cherry blossom?" The little girl nodded, and just like that, a new story began. They say, if you make a wish under the falling cherry blossoms, it might just come true. But what they don't tell you is this. Sometimes, the wish doesn't come true right away. Sometimes, it takes years. Sometimes, it takes heartbreak. Sometimes, it takes courage to write one last letter even when you think no one will ever read it. But if you wait, if you believe, if you keep writing, love finds a way back. Always. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment Sakura, so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.